community engagement for the university. I want to welcome all of you to this session this morning. This is the second in a series of sessions we've had on promotion tenure and community engaged scholarship. Last month we had Dr. Barbara Holland, national expert in the field, who actually is with us this morning to kick us off in the session. And today we continue. Interestingly, last week I was in San Diego, California for the Coalition of Urban and Metropolitan Universities Community Engagement Conference. And I was witness to the individual who received this year's award in honor that is named after Dr. Holland, the Barbara Holland Scholar Practitioner Award. This year's recipient, Dr. Patrick Green from Loyola University, Chicago, in his remarks, talk about the fact that if higher education is interested in transforming our communities, we must first transform ourselves. And that is exactly what I think this is all about. How can we as higher education transform ourselves so that we can transform communities? Today's presenter will talk about what we need to do in higher education to transform ourselves as pertains to community engaged scholarship so we can better transform our communities. And so with that, I want to turn over to our Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, Dr. Cherie Dawson-Edwards, who will present our speaker this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. I'm super excited. There we go. I'm super excited to. Okay, let's do some housekeeping. If everybody could mute.
Can each person mute themselves, please?
Okay, I think we're good. We're good. Okay, I'm Cherie Dawson-Edwards. I'm super excited to have Dr. Goodkind with us this morning. I will absolutely let her talk about her work, but I just want to briefly just talk a little bit about the things that I found fascinating in her bio, mainly because we have a lot of similar interests as far as our research and community engaged scholarship is concerned. But Dr. Goodkind is a critical feminist scholar who examines the structural roots of what are often perceived as individual level problems. Her research examines and exposes institutional biases and systemic inequities, tracing young people's pathways through systems and providing evidence and recommendations for systems and policy change. What I also found very interesting, other than all the other wonderful things that she has done, she is the co-convener of the Black Girls Equity Alliance Juvenile Justice Work Group, and it focuses on eradicating inequities affecting Black girls in their county. And the Juvenile Justice Work Group is a leading collaborative efforts aimed at systemic changes that disrupt pathways to juvenile justice for Black youth. And so, I know that she's going to talk to us today about community engaged scholarship, but I think it's also important to highlight her engaged scholarship in her positionality in this work. And so thank you so much, Dr. Goodkind, for being here and sharing your expertise with us. So I will turn it over to you where she will present, and then we will do a Q&A. We'll be monitoring the chat for questions. If you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat or save it until after her presentation. So Dr. Goodkind.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for inviting me. It's really wonderful to be here. And as I was saying to Henry before, I'm excited to learn from you all as well, and to have this conversation today. So I'll just first say that I'm more familiar with using Zoom than Teams. So bear with me, but I'm going to share my screen because I have some slides that I want to share. And how does that look? Do you all see the slides?
It's perfect. Now? We can see your slide.
Okay, thank you. And also, please do feel free to let me know if a question pops up in the chat or someone wants to have a question while I'm talking. I hope this can be informal and useful conversation for all of us. So, but I don't know that I'll see the chat myself in the presenter view. So please just let me know. So I thought I would explain first just why Henry invited me, which is because at the University of Pittsburgh, where I think you heard, I'm a professor in the School of Social Work, and I have secondary appointments in sociology and gender, sexuality, and women's studies. And so last spring here at Pitt, our provost convened a committee, and she charged this committee with developing guidelines for schools and departments to account for community engaged scholarship in the promotion and tenure process. I was the chair of this committee, and the committee included faculty from across campus and of different types. So including faculty who were tenured, who were tenure stream, and then what we call at Pitt appointment stream, which are faculty that are outside of the tenure stream. And we worked quickly and collaboratively in one semester because we got this charged and in January, and we're asked to finish by the end of our spring semester to develop a set of recommendations and guidelines. Oh shoot, sorry. Here I go. Okay, so this year, our schools and departments have begun the work of implementing and incorporating these new guidelines into our school and departmental level tenure and promotion processes and policies. And so now I'm involved with that work in my own school. And again, because of these experiences that we've had at Pitt, Henry invited me to talk with you today and share some of what we've learned. And I hope to learn from what you all are doing as well. So I thought it would be helpful to start with a definition of community engaged scholarship. Of course, there isn't just one definition, but this is the definition that was developed and adopted here at Pitt. So as you can see, it says engaged scholarship seeks to discover new knowledge through activities that collaboratively generate, exchange, or apply academic and community knowledge and practices through reciprocal partnerships among members of the university. Uh-oh. Good. Okay. All right. Sorry, among members of the university and members of the broader public. So this often includes methods or approaches like CBPR, engaged action research, research practice partnerships, and so on. And it results in the public dissemination of new knowledge through academic publications, policy recommendations, technical reports, co-created exhibitions and creative pieces, and other kinds of joint projects that benefit both the community and the university. Obviously, not all faculty conduct community engaged scholarship. And when we were working on our guidelines, we made it clear that that should not be a requirement, nor is even that desirable. As probably many of you know, it's a particular kind of scholarship and it takes particular kinds of work. So really the purpose of defining community engaged scholarship is to enable it to be counted alongside more traditional, in the academic sense, forms of scholarship towards tenure and promotion, right? So not valuing either one more than the other, but just having a way to value and account and recognize both types. Community engagement, of course, can be part of scholarship teaching and service, and it should be counted and rewarded in all three categories. But for the purpose of recognizing community engaged scholarship in tenure and promotion, the presentation I'm sharing today, and indeed our committee's work at Pitt, focus primarily on scholarship, acknowledging that some projects and activities cut across the three pillars of scholarship, teaching, and service. And lastly, before I continue, I just thought it would be helpful to also specify what we mean by community when we talk about community engaged scholarship. So typically within community engaged scholarship, a community is defined as a group that shares an area of geography, shares a common identity, shares a common experience, or shares a common area of concern or interest. So again, there are multiple ways to define that. So as part of the university-wide committee at Pitt, we articulated a set of principles of community engaged scholarship that we could base our guidelines on. These are not necessarily exhaustive or the only way to obviously to articulate these principles, but this is how we have done so, and I thought I would share them. All right, so the first one is that community engaged scholarship requires meaningful, trusting, and sustained partnerships, which take time and capacity to develop. So this relationship work is an essential part of the scholarship building process. And it incorporates community-based collaborators into all phases of the research and into the research and creative processes. So it can't be done without this relationship building phase. The second principle is that community engaged scholarship must be mutual and reciprocal in benefits and responsibilities. So the effort that community engaged scholars make to ensure that benefits are equally distributed among community partners and academics takes time and skill. And in addition to traditional academic products, the research must also lead to products that are useful to the community partner and the community more broadly. So this involves extra responsibilities for both the scholar and the community-based collaborators, and this should also be acknowledged. The third principle that we articulated is that community engaged scholarship requires holistic perspective and review. Community engaged scholarship most often occurs in the context of a project that may have multiple processes, partnerships, products, and impacts. And I'll talk more about all of those things in a minute. Assessing the products of community engaged scholarship separately from one another and from the larger context of the whole project may reduce and diminish their relevance, rigor, and holistic impact. So it really needs to be kind of looked at broadly and holistically. The fourth principle we articulated that I'll also be talking a lot about today is that community engaged scholarship has impact within and beyond the academy. Its community impacts are tangible, applied, and can occur at a variety of scales, meaning neighborhood, locality, region, nation, community of interest, or shared identity or experience. And finally, community engaged scholarship stands on its own as a form of rigorous scholarship, and it takes many forms. The impact, products, and assessment have their own unique kinds of rigorous evidence. Of course, community engaged scholarship looks different in different disciplines and spaces, and it involves diverse knowledge traditions, partners, sources of accountability, funding, and forms of dissemination. All right, so those are the principles that we used to guide the recommendations that our committee made that then were shared across campus. And I'll be getting to some of those in a second. I thought I would also just articulate some of the challenges that face faculty who engage in community engaged scholarship as they navigate the promotion and tenure process. Probably a lot of these are already clear and maybe you already know, but I thought it was worth just mentioning some of them. Okay, so community engaged scholarship often takes longer than many other forms of scholarship, and therefore the products from it may be fewer and they may take longer to appear. In addition, community engaged scholarship rarely results in sole authored products. So it can be difficult to disentangle and describe individual contribution, right? By its nature, community engaged scholarship is collaborative. And so if it's done how we hope to do it, it's collaborative at every phase. And so it's really not possible to say this is one person's unique contribution in many cases, right? So we have to change how we think in some ways about the specific scholars' contributions and impact because it is so collaborative. A third challenge is that community engaged scholarship products include not just like the traditional products that we often assess, like peer-reviewed journal articles and books, but also more public-facing products like reports, videos, exhibits, trainings, and policy briefs. Often these other kinds of public-facing products are not counted in the promotion and tenure process. So we're working to change that and find ways to to account for them. And lastly, and I feel like this, I'm going to keep saying this, but community engaged scholarship aims to have impact not just within, but also beyond the academy. So how we usually measure impact also may miss some of the effects and impacts beyond the academy, since we're usually measuring impact within the academic sphere. So I'll talk more about that in a moment. All right, so I wanted to first begin with some strategies to support faculty who engage in community engaged scholarship. These are aimed mainly at chairs, directors, deans, associate deans, people who have some kind of leadership role, but also just colleagues or more senior faculty in any department can help with this. So one thing that we can do when we have newer faculty who do community engaged scholarship is we can be sure to connect them with mentors who are also involved with community engaged scholarship, whether they are within the school or department or outside. We can also ensure that our departmental promotion and tenure guidelines demonstrate in tangible ways that community engaged scholarship is as valued as other forms of scholarship. And to do that, we need to state that specifically and explicitly. This is what we're working on right now at Pitt. We can, as part of this, revise the promotion and tenure guidelines to account for the fact that it takes time and resources to build partnerships and to conduct community engaged scholarship. As a result of that, the expectations that we have about the number and timing of publications and other products should be adjusted for faculty who are involved with community engaged scholarship. And we should emphasize rigor, quality, and impact of community engaged scholarship products rather than the number and timing. And that's what I want to talk a little bit more about on this next slide. All right, so how can we support faculty to demonstrate the rigor, quality, and impact of their engaged scholarship? Now, rigor and quality are discipline specific, of course, but for our community engaged scholarship, they should also recognize the importance of mutual benefit, sustainability, and impact of the scholarship. And I'm going to talk more about processes for doing that. I want to talk a little bit more right now about about impact, right? So again, we're aiming to have impact within and beyond the academy. And we're generally aiming to benefit diverse communities from local to global. So I think you all already know how academic impact is defined in your fields. So I want to talk a little bit about public impact. So when we assess the impact of engaged scholarship, we need to review faculty projects in a holistic fashion, in a way that can incorporate how they contribute to scholarship teaching and service, even if we are at that moment focused on scholarship. And this integration within projects is a kind of innovation of a lot of community engaged scholarship, and it needs to be discussed separately from the faculty members' more explicit contributions to service. So one issue that's happened is that sometimes the community engaged scholarship gets lumped over into the service category. And so we need to support faculty in demonstrating how this is a really important and perhaps the main part of their scholarly contributions. So to do that, we need to help community engaged scholars describe how their work reflects reciprocity and building trust with the communities that they seek to impact when they're talking about the impact of that work. So I'll talk more about that process of documenting that in a moment too. But we also need to ensure that impact is measured not just through the traditional academic metrics like citations or impact factors of journals, but also through what some people call alt metrics. I think alt metric is actually one kind of name of that. We also at Pitt have something called Plum X. These alternative metrics, which I'm still learning about, and I know we had someone from our library come to a number of different meetings that I've been part of to share with us more about how we can use our library subscriptions to altmetrics and Plumex and other things that help us demonstrate these. And maybe there are some of you right now on this in this session who know a lot more about these than I do and can share with that. I'm still learning about those, but some of the things that these other metrics track include how many people read certain published records and articles, and other measures of attention, like number of times different reports or articles were downloaded, saved, viewed, mentions in traditional and social media, participation in public presentations, all those kinds of things. So we need to support faculty in tracking all of those things and then in counting them. We can also encourage and support community engaged scholars to describe how their work impacts the broader society. So again, we need to think broadly. This might include changes to systems delivery, policy implementation, enhancing access for historically excluded communities, and increased public scientific literacy and public engagement with science and technology, among many other things. I know the National Science Foundation is talking about this as broadening impacts, and I think we all need to kind of broaden what we include when we think about impact. Of course, we also need to ensure and support community engaged scholars in describing their impact within the academy. And that might also include potential innovations in interdisciplinary and integrative research. And one way we can support faculty in doing this is to gather and provide examples of personal statements and CVs from other faculty who do community engaged scholarship in the specific fields, right, that can serve as models for good ways to do this. I also know that you all have a wonderful faculty handbook at the University of Louisville that's focused on engaged scholarship, and it provides details on how to do a lot of this as well. I wanted to also speak a bit about recommendations specifically for faculty members who are engaging in community engaged scholarship. And of course, there's a lot of overlap between these different sets of recommendations that I'm presenting. The ones for those supporting faculty, these ones for faculty, and then the final set I'll talk about are recommendations for people who are reviewing the dossiers of community engaged scholars, but I still hope that it's helpful to kind of break it out a little bit. All right, so for faculty who are doing community engaged scholarship, it's really important to document the process, outcomes, and impact of your work. And the process includes developing the relationships, planning and conducting the research, analyzing the data, producing reports, articles, and other products, disseminating these findings, right? So the process includes quite a bit. The outcomes that, like I just discussed, also include lots of different kinds of products, but it doesn't include just these tangible reports and articles, but also the relationships themselves are an outcome because they contain the potential for continued collaboration, impact within the community, just enhancing that, right? Many universities have a kind of fraught relationship with the community that they're located in because of past research practices that were extractive, right? Where researchers went out, got data in the community, took it back, wrote articles, and never engaged or communicated that. And so engaged scholarship also has the opportunity to repair those relationships and build stronger connections between the university and the community. So that's an outcome too. I talked some about impact just now. This is so important, right? And one thing I saw in the University of Louisville faculty handbook on engaged scholarship is that there's a template, a kind of table that you could adjust as you need or want to track some of these different things. And I thought that looked really, really helpful. Another important thing to do as a community engaged scholar is to frame your collaborative story and contributions. And in doing this, you could emphasize what was learned through this collaborative research that wouldn't have been discovered through a traditional academic approach. You can tell that whole story of how the collaboration began and what other contributions that have resulted. You can also be sure to indicate on your CV when your community partners are co-authors. Sometimes people use a special star or symbol for indicating community partners as co-authors, and you can create sections on your CV for reports, exhibits, trainings, all those kinds of things. Of course, it's really important to track and report media coverage of your work, and you can have a section for this on your CV as well. And when you are telling this story, be sure that you are connecting your scholarship, teaching, and service in holistic ways, even if you are required in your statement to have separate sections for each of those. And the last recommendation I wanted to share for faculty doing this work is to ask for help when you need it. I think that often in the academy, it can be this kind of model of working on your own to prove yourself. And of course, community engaged scholarship is collaborative by nature and encourages us to think a little bit differently. And so I know that other community engaged scholars will be glad to help you think through and provide feedback as you're working on documenting your work. All right, and so the last slide that I have is recommendations for people who are reviewing the dossiers of community engaged scholars. All right, so first of all, this is probably crystal clear by now, but it's important to go into this review with the understanding that these dossiers are going to look different than the dossiers that we may be used to reviewing. So as a result of that, it's important to read and follow the revised tenure and promotion guidelines. So this is a little bit hopeful here, right? If you all, I hope, are going through a process like we are at Pitt, where we are revising our departmental and school level guidelines, then we have something that we can pay attention to and be sure that we're following. And it's really exciting now to be doing this in my school. As I said, I'm part of that effort, and it's providing us an opportunity not just to better incorporate community engaged scholarship, but to also just rethink and value other kinds of contributions and knowledge production that I think we haven't always been really good at doing. Again, I talked before about relationships, not just as part of the process, but as an important outcome. And so that's something that reviewers can also be looking at. I talked some also about this next one in terms of counting both academic and public facing products. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about these public facing products. The production of sole author products often conflicts with the principles of community engaged scholarship, and I talked about that. And so in addition to just thinking beyond these traditional sole authored articles, we need to think about all the ways that that the findings of the scholarship are being disseminated. So some public facing products might include blogs, websites, multimedia materials, exhibitions, installations, murals, curricula, policies and policy reports, placemaking plans and zoning or technical reports. So all of these can be important products, and we need to take them into account. Other products that might result from community engaged scholarship are translational products. Some of these might demonstrate how academically informed discovery has been translated into community-based practice, such as newly developed curricula, patents, new creative genres, or treatment protocols. We also might have translational products which demonstrate how community-informed discovery has been translated into academic practice, such as newly developed theories, interventions, research protocols, or innovations in teaching. Other important products might be educational resources or learning materials that can be used by and replicated across diverse communities. And then, of course, we also have published open access reports that are accessible to a breadth of readers and can be used to inform changes to systems and policies. So thinking about all these different types of products and taking them into account when we are reviewing the dossiers and writing up letters based on that is really essential. We also want to focus on impact rather than productivity. So I know in my school we have had a tradition of counting articles, and that isn't a way that really can value and reflect the contributions of community engaged scholarship. So we have to really, and we're working on this again on writing about the impact when we're reviewing our scholars that do this work. And also we can ensure that at least some external reviewers for faculty who do community engaged scholarship are community engaged scholars themselves. So if there isn't anyone on the tenure and promotion committee who does this work, we can have an outside member, or we can be sure we're sending the dossiers to external reviewers who have this expertise. So that's what we've been learning about and working on here at Pitt, and that's what I prepared for you all to share. So I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for conversation.
So there is a question in the chat, and then there's someone who has their hand raised. So I'll read the question, and you might even can see it now, but it says, we have some departments here with department personnel policies that explicitly exclude community engaged scholarship and tenure evaluations. Do you have recommendations for how to bring those departments along in revising their policies?
Wow. That's a difficult question. I mean, I will say that the way I think we're doing that at Pitt is that the provost convened this committee and then she gave this charge to all schools and departments. So that is a little bit top down, but it sometimes can be effective in the sense that you know what she and I didn't say this actually, but I think this is really important. So I'll just share that actually last year when they convened this committee on community engaged scholarship, the provost also convened, I'll call it a sister committee that's focused on DEI work and how that can be accounted for in tenure and promotion. And you know, the provost recognized there's often overlap between those two, but that they're both really important and both need to be incorporated into the tenure and promotion guidelines of schools and departments. So yeah, so here we're doing that in a top-down way and it's kind of been ordered, but I realize that that's not always completely effective, right? Because if there is a discipline that's particularly resistant to counting this, then there might be some kind of rebellion in that department. So I think having conversations within schools and departments around how this is scholarship and how it both aligns and doesn't align with the more traditional forms of scholarship, but how it also contributes in some of the ways we're used to accounting for can be helpful too. And maybe but I hope maybe other people have answers to that or suggestions that they want to share.
Thank you. And Craig Blakely. Craig, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, okay. Enjoyed it. So I'm Dean of Public Health, and like social work, we're very much engaged in community, a little more heavily policy focused than clinical, I guess. Nevertheless, I really appreciated your last slide, and you know, we a couple years ago changed our promotion and tenure guidelines in the school to allow both instruction and quote practice service be primary areas of review. And so we've now been through the review process 2 times and have had 2 people come through in those new cells, if you will, and bumped into problems both times. And you know, I think the big issue is you can't write your guidelines well enough to include everything that you should have thought of, particularly when that's you know, a fairly significant policy change. And despite the fact that faculty are very much engaged in developing those new guidelines, when you actually find them working on a review committee, it's like half of it gets forgotten, you know, and so I think one thing that we learned was you have to be very, very proactive about sitting down with everybody each year early on in the process to make sure everybody's on the same page and you recognize those non-traditional publication sources and all those kinds of things as maybe not equivalent, but still important. And so, I mean, the big point I think I'm making is just that despite best intentions, there's a lot of work that needs to be done for several years trying to make the whole system work. But thank you for your presentation. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for that really important point. I think it's true. I mean, I don't know if you all have a similar experience to me, but I've found that, you know, in the academy, a lot of faculty, you know, feel like the way they had to do things and how it was done and is the way it always should be, you know, that it's hard to move away from that attitude. And I think also the sense that, okay, the kind of scholarship I do is the best kind and it's better than what other people do. And how do we I mean, I just say this because this is an ongoing conversation in my school, in the School of Social Work, about how can we really recognize that multiple different kinds of scholarship are useful and important. And in fact, our school is better and stronger when we have people doing all these different kinds of things. When we're not all doing the same thing, we can make greater contributions. But it is an ongoing conversation that we have not.
Yeah, I think something related to both of the first comments is you need to ensure turnover and move the old people out of the way. I can say that because I'm one of them. Thank you.
Looks like JP Mosen has a question or comment. JP?
Yeah, Sarah, thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation. Unfortunately, the last 4 minutes of it, I was on the phone. I received a call and I could not ignore, but perhaps you addressed this. But my question is, who has the burden to justify and show the scholarship and rigor and is this the person who's doing the work? Is this the department chair? And I think we're all in it, but is this a responsibility of the committee evaluating to actually do the work to identify that? Could you comment on that, please?
Well, that's a good question. I do think it's everyone in some that, and so I think, you know, again, as we rewrite our guidelines, if we offer instructions for how to do that and we emphasize the value of this, right? We're starting that out. But you know, one thing I've seen in my own school, it's not just for community engaged scholars, but I think for all junior faculty, there isn't always enough guidance on how do you write that statement where you talk about the contributions of your scholarship and teaching and service. And so I think having mentorship can really be helpful for doing that. Again, sharing examples and encouraging faculty to talk about why it matters, right? I think that also we get so we often in the academy get very focused on our more narrow fields and contributions, and we sometimes assume that like it's obvious the bigger impact, that why this is really important work to do. And I think especially for community engaged scholarship where we're trying explicitly to have public impact, we need to work on telling those stories. So obviously some responsibility lies with the scholar themselves to tell the story, but I think we really need to support them in having examples and valuing those stories when we hear them. I hope that answered your question, but maybe not. We're still working on that here, so I don't think we've completely figured it out. But I see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Holland? You're muted.
Hello.
Here we go.
So I'm 72 years old, and I've been in this field for a mighty long time and seen it around the world. And Dr. Goodkind has has offered a very clear and story of how it has, this field has progressed but not evolved. I'm going to say it that way. But at this stage of my life, I just say it as I see it. And here's the good. I want to tell you some sort of clever things you would do if you were wanting to impress somebody else. What we really have in this conversation is the envy of faculty who want to pass on the pain that they had in their experience. And so here's some interesting thought points. When we started engagement in the 1990s, there were only 2, maybe 3 generations of faculty. Now there are up to 5. And we have a growing number of people. If we go back to the 1990s, the federal support for community service and engagement started in 1992 with the Clinton administration, and it has lasted. And so all of the young faculty, starting probably in about the mid, I don't know, 2020 maybe, had experience in engagement. And so, and they see its value, and they're doing research on it, and they're publishing on it. And one of the challenges, footnote here, is we need to improve the quality of the journals for engagement. It has been too much feel-good stuff, and that's something to work on. But here is some just thinking about the reality of the generations. So now, and we have in many institutions multiple generations who have had this and experience and want to continue it, and are doing data related research. But we are dealing with a couple of generations who just want to pass on the pain. And I think it's one of the best things you can do. It seems simple, but it's really effective, is if you can find among the senior complainers anybody who has any kind of real openness to any thoughts about this, is to point to them to the institutions we know are having wildly success with engagement. It leads to money diffs. It leads to state reappreciation if it's a public institution. We need to give them data that says, okay, you don't want us to do this, but university blah blah just got this huge $1 million gift from whatever. And we need to have the spunk just put some factoids in front of them that will show that will sparkle their desire to be admired, to be highly ranked, to be seen as an interesting institution. Envy is a really powerful thing in higher ed. And our problem over the years has been that as we get the younger faculty coming in, they keep doing it, but they haven't really been able to figure out how to get senior people to feel that it really is good, not just for them, but for the institution. Does that make any sense? And I think it's a free plan.
Barbara, I'm glad you brought that up. And again, thank you, Dr. Goodkind, for the affirmation of what we're trying to do here. And, you know, when we're talking about the different generations, it occurred to me in your talk, and both in your talk and what Dr. Holland was saying, that a lot of times the composition of our personnel committees end up being the generation that's been here the longest. And one of my concerns is, you know, as we see, and these are great tips and best practices, how do we ensure that someone who has expertise in community engaged scholarship is reviewing and has voice in the promotion and tenure process? So I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if there should be like an external committee member. I don't know if there should be an extra layer. I don't know, because it just seems problematic that if someone who's never done this work is at the departmental level, even the chair, you know, but the personnel committees and the chairs who may not have any experience with this, even if we give them guidelines, are they really able to objectively review a dossier that does look different, you know? And I love the idea of sharing great examples of memos or cover memos or personal statements to help guide people. But anyway, I thought about like the composition of some of the personnel committees that I know. They could not probably objectively look at community engaged scholars, and I'm thinking about ways we can insert an added layer, not protection, but added layer value to those dossiers in those cases. I don't know if that's a question, or is it, if you have thoughts on like what we can do.
Well, it's really interesting question, because we had a big discussion about this on that university-wide committee last spring in terms of the recommendations we were making. And sort of one thing we were discussing at the end was, should we recommend that there be a university-wide standing committee of people with this expertise that schools and departments can call on when they don't have someone with that expertise? Because we had a conversation about how it's really different in different disciplines. Like in social work or public health, of course, there are probably a lot of people doing community engaged scholarship. But what about in computer science, where we have people doing community engaged scholarship, but that's obviously not that traditional for computer science, right? And so who do they call on if they don't have someone on that committee? And so we did, I think, in the end, recommend a university-wide committee, but we were also mindful of the fact that then this is another service obligation for community engaged scholars who already are doing a lot of service, probably by nature of their work. And is that really sustainable? And I don't think we've gotten there yet at Pitt at how we should do this. I know that at Pitt, we recently, and I don't know what things look like at your university, but they actually recently, just in the last 2 years, added another university-wide committee on tenure and promotion. I actually think a lot of schools already had these. We just had the kind of department and school level, and then it went straight to the chancellor. So they've added this other committee. So maybe some of that could also happen there, but I don't know. That might be a little bit too late if the letters that are written at the school or department level aren't valuing that work. Dr. Holland, do you have ideas?
Well, I think you're reinforcing and adding to my little rant that if for our young faculty and elder faculty who love to do this work, have to be serious about having it have an intellectual aspect and making it clear. And too often that because senior people who don't appreciate this still want to see younger faculty doing things that they did in the way they did, and they weren't to do anything really fun and interesting and exotic until they had tenure. And most of the young faculty now don't even aspire to tenure. They aspire to work at different universities and have their children live in different communities. And so I think it's really the problem is the senior faculty don't have any resources to tell them what the state of higher ed is now really, and how it is changing because of these younger groups that are coming into it. They don't hear it, they don't read it, they don't see it. And so they're just doing the same thing that they know that they did all through their career. And I think engaging visitors from institutions that they admire and are doing well with this, like yours at Pittsburgh, I think that is a really good strategy. And a good thing that not too many people are doing that. And I think the more we engage them, not all of the elder faculty do it just because they want to pass on the pain of their own experience. Some of them just don't even know what this is really about. They haven't bothered to look at it. And so sending and exchanging dialogues on your campus with visitors from admired institutions would have an effect. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, really important point. I think also your point about the importance of making contributions within the academy, right, to our leading journals in our fields, to theory, to the teaching we do. That is equally important and shouldn't be neglected. Because we're not talking about service here, we're talking about scholarship. And our committee last spring had a lot of conversations really about that reciprocal benefit, right, to the scholars and to the or to the academic researchers and the community-based researchers, right, to the different partners. And how do we do that? And I know from my own experience that that's really complicated to navigate because I know in some of my work, like what you mentioned before with the Black Girls Equity Alliance, we do a lot of public facing things. And there were then some moments when I was like, okay, I also have to be sure we are producing some articles and articles that can be impactful in how we do research in the academy, that's showing what can be gained from this kind of research, both for our scholarly fields, and then, as you were also talking about before, Dr. Holland, for the university, right? Like there are real benefits to the university for doing this kind of work. And I agree, we have to be emphasizing those.
You remind me of another important point. We should encourage and support our engaged faculty, whatever their generation, to not focus too much on the engagement journals. Honestly, I have my first 2 degrees are in journalism. They are interesting, they're storytellers, they are not academic, they are not rigorous. And so I think a very important point is to be supporting our engaged faculty and help them just direct them to the proper kinds of journals that will actually help build the field of engagement as well as their own career. And that's an important point because there are too many journals about engagement right now. That's a problem in the field. And we need to consolidate and have them be more distinctive one from the other. And publishing in those is not helping any of the young faculty.
Yeah, really good points.
There's a question in the chat from Lauren Herberly, and she asks, has Pittsburgh tried to include dollars in startup packages for newly hired community engaged scholars?
So like funding that's specifically targeted to support the engaged scholarship, I think is the question.
Yeah, exactly
Yes.
that. So money that could be used that's freed up for even paying for partnerships or paying for, the costs that are harder to get funded sometimes in smaller startup, developing the relationship, kind of work. That's we have some grants, internal grants that have been doing that. Henry's crew has a set of grants that helps with that, but having that in the startup package, I was thinking might be a good way to get buy-in from departments in their hires and also go towards retention at the same time. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a wonderful suggestion. So I'll say, I don't know exactly what's in the startup packages that are being offered in different schools or even in my own school. So I'm not sure about that, but I will say related to that, that Pitt has in the past 3 to 5 years redone all of our internal university-wide funding mechanisms. And I know through these grants that are, that sort of anyone across the university can apply to, they are both encouraging interdisciplinary work. So they are encouraging teams across different schools and departments. And they're also encouraging community engaged scholarship because community partners can count as some of the people from outside your school or department. And these internal funding mechanisms don't allow faculty to pay their own time anyway, but they do allow to fund community partners' times, to pay, participants for their time in engaging in different ways, and some of those other costs that you mentioned in your question. So I think as a whole, Pitt is doing a better job with that, or really thinking about how we incorporate that into our internal funding mechanisms. But I love the idea of having that be part of startup packages as well. I just don't know if we're doing that or not.
Are there any other questions? There's lots of thanks happening in the chat for you. So I'm thinking people really got a lot out of this, and I really appreciate this conversation. Henry, do you have any final remarks or words?
Well, I would like to thank Dr. Goodkind for a wonderful presentation. This was right on target. These are the issues and challenges that we are facing here at the University of Louisville. And I love what you guys are doing at the University of Pittsburgh. I know my good friend Lena Dostio, she and I exchange notes on a regular basis. And I know you guys are doing a wonderful job there at Pittsburgh, and we can learn a lot from what you are doing. So thank you for sharing that. Dr. Holland, of course, being a national expert in the field and a pioneer in the field, always has, wonderful word of advice and wisdom that she shares with us. So I want to thank you, Dr. Holland, that you were able to join us this morning. This is the second of this series. We hope to have continued conversation in this field. Sherry and I have been talking about, doing some sessions with personnel committee, with department chairs, to kind of talk about how can we do this properly here at the University of Louisville. What can we do? So expect to hear from us in the future as we develop plans to further this conversation and develop some tangible ways that we can address the promotion tenure issues as it pertains to engaged scholarship. So I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. This has been a wonderful, very informative and educational sessions.
Henry?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to say in particular, hi to Gail. I haven't seen you in a long time. Text me, email me.
Thank you. It's great to see you too. And thank you, Henry, and all the folks at U of L for having this great conversation. It's, this is not the final conversation, but it sure is wonderful to keep it going and see how we can impact some change. So thank you.
Henry, I must be getting up because I got up at 6:30 this morning for this. I must have my energy of thought, but I really appreciate the information that has come from Pittsburgh. It's certainly a great competitor that your faculty appreciate as an institution they would find admiring. And I think we should continue the dialogue in ways that start to really, these two institutions have a lot in common. And I think it could be very impactful for the field for us to maybe actively think about some ways to exchange our strategies and or exchange dialogues between cranky faculty. It's a technical term. If anybody just anyway, I'll explain it.
Yeah, good point, Barbara. And yes, Lena and I will continue talking. Lena Dusty is the Vice Chancellor for Engagement at the University of Pittsburgh and a very good friend of mine. And we will continue the conversation and see how we can collaborate and work together to address this issue on both of our campuses. So yes, thank you for reminding me of that. And thank you all, everyone, for attending this morning. Gil, thank you for joining us this morning. And hopefully we can take this across Kentucky. Gil is with Kentucky Campus Compact. And hopefully we can take these kinds of sessions across Kentucky, not just to U of L, but to all of our institutions. So thank you, Gil, for joining us this morning. And thank you to everyone who took time to be with us this morning. There will be a recording of this session on the Office of Community Engagement website. So for those people who missed the session, you can actually view the recording. And there is a link in the chat of the Handbook on Engaged Scholarship. So you can take a chance to look at that as well. Again, thank you all very much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.